I, 32F, discovered my husband Ronald, 34M, was cheating on me with my best friend Ariadne, 31F, for the past 2 years. I got my revenge by selling his precious car collection, and now everyone is calling me cruel. I need to give you all some background to understand how we got here. Ronald and I met in our senior year of college through mutual friends at a homecoming party. He immediately stood out because while everyone else was talking about their job prospects and student loans, he was excitedly showing people pictures of the classic car collection he had just inherited from his grandfather. The way his eyes lit up when he talked about those cars was what first attracted me to him. He came from old money, with his family owning several successful businesses across the state. When we started dating, his family, especially his mother Claire, made it clear they thought I was beneath them. They would make subtle comments about my father being a high school teacher and my mother running a small bakery. Claire once asked me if I had ever even been on a private jet before, as if that was some kind of requirement to date her son. But Ronald was different from his family. He defended me constantly and told them that he loved how grounded and genuine I was. He said I kept him connected to the real world instead of the bubble his family lived in. We dated for 4 years, during which I supported him when he decided to start his own tech company instead of joining the family business. Those early years were tough. We lived in a small apartment because Ronald wanted to prove he could make it without his family's money. I worked 2 jobs, teaching during the day and waitressing at night, to help support us while he got his business off the ground. His family kept telling him to dump the gold digger, me, and come back to the family business, but he stood firm. The company eventually took off, and we got married in a beautiful ceremony that his family only attended out of obligation. The only person who seemed genuinely happy for me was my best friend Ariadne. She and I had been inseparable since high school when we were both outcasts, me for being the scholarship kid and her for being the new girl who didn't know anyone. Ariadne was my maid of honor and helped plan every detail of the wedding. She threw me the most amazing bachelorette party and gave the most touching speech at our reception. She had never been lucky in relationships herself, always picking the wrong guys. I used to feel guilty about my happiness with Ronald, especially when she would joke about finding her own Ronald someday. After the wedding, we bought a beautiful house with a massive garage for Ronald's car collection. He had 12 classic cars worth over $2.5 million, everything from a 1967 Shelby GT500 to a 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. He spent every weekend either working on them or showing them at car events. I never really got into cars myself, but I loved seeing how happy they made him. 3 years ago, Ronald had a health scare, nothing serious in the end, but it made us think about the future. He gave me power of attorney over all his assets, saying he trusted me completely to make decisions if anything happened to him. I remember crying when he did that, thinking about how far we'd come from his family's initial distrust. Things started changing about 2 years ago. Ronald's company was doing better than ever, but he was suddenly working late all the time. He said they were working on a revolutionary new product that required extra hours. I believed him because why wouldn't I? He had always been honest with me. He became weirdly protective of his phone and started taking calls in another room. If I walked in while he was on the phone, he would quickly end the call. He changed his phone password for the first time in our relationship. I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, he was handling sensitive business information. Ariadne was around a lot during this time, always ready to listen to my worries and tell me I was overthinking things. She suggested I surprise Ronald at work with lunch one day, but when I did, his secretary said he was out at meetings. This happened several times, and each time Ariadne would tell me it was probably just work stress. The truth finally came out last week when I was doing laundry and found hotel receipts in his jacket pocket. They were for local hotels, which made no sense since we lived in the city. His iPad dinged with a message while it was lying on our coffee table, and for the first time in our marriage, I snooped. He had forgotten to log out of his messages, and there they were, hundreds of messages between him and Ariadne going back 2 years. They had been meeting at hotels 3 or 4 times a week. The messages were full of their plans for the future and jokes about how oblivious I was. Ariadne called me a trusting fool, and Ronald replied that's why he married me, because I never questioned anything. I felt physically sick reading their messages. They had been sleeping together in our house when I was at my parents' place. They met up before and after our weekly family dinners. The worst part was reading how they would laugh about my total trust in both of them. Instead of confronting them immediately, I decided to hit them where it would hurt most. Ronald's precious cars were his true love. He spent more time with them than with me anyway. I spent a week quietly contacting collectors and specialty car dealers. I had to sell them below market value to move them quickly, but I managed to get about $2 million for all 12 cars. I transferred the money to a new account in my name only, which I had the right to do thanks to the power of attorney he had given me. Then I waited until their next hotel meetup. They were creatures of habit and always met at the same place on Thursdays. I went to the hotel, explained to the manager that I was his wife, and got access to their room. I filmed them together, making sure to get clear shots of their faces. Then I sent the video to his family, his business partners, our friends, and Ariadne's family. When Ronald came home that night, he found empty spaces in his garage and a note that simply said, "I know everything." He went completely insane, calling and texting me hundreds of times. His family is threatening every kind of legal action imaginable, and Ariadne's family won't even speak to her. My own family is divided. My mom and sister say I should have just filed for divorce, while my dad and brothers think Ronald got what he deserved. Some of our friends say I went too nuclear by involving his business partners, but I wanted everyone to know exactly what kind of people they are. Ida for destroying his most prized possession after he destroyed my trust and marriage? Update 1 First, I want to thank everyone for their support on my original post. A lot has happened in the past 2 weeks, and the situation has gotten even more complicated than I imagined. After I sold Ronald's cars, he tried to freeze all our joint accounts, but I had already moved most of our shared money. I left enough to cover our regular bills because I'm not completely heartless, but I made sure he couldn't touch the car money or our main savings. His family is beyond furious. Apparently, several of those cars had been in their family for 3 generations. His grandfather had specifically mentioned in his will that the cars should stay in the family, though legally they belonged to Ronald. Claire, my mother-in-law, showed up at my workplace screaming about family legacy and how I had no right to sell pieces of their family history. My co-workers had to call security to remove her. She kept yelling that I was nothing but a gold digger who finally showed my true colors. The irony of her accusations wasn't lost on me, considering what her precious son had been doing. But the biggest twist in this whole mess came 3 days ago when I received a message from a man named John. He introduced himself as Ariadne's husband. Yes, you read that right. Ariadne has been married for the past 5 years. She had kept it hidden from everyone except her immediate family, claiming she and John had to keep their marriage private because of his job in government security. John found out about the affair through the video I sent to Ariadne's family. Instead of being angry at me for exposing everything, he reached out to help. He works in financial crimes investigation and offered to look into Ronald's company finances. What he found was shocking. Through his investigation, John discovered that Ronald had been systematically embezzling money from his company for the past 2 years. He had set up fake vendor accounts and was transferring company funds to secret accounts. The total amount was close to $3.5 million. Most of this money went towards setting up a luxurious future with Ariadne. He had already bought a beachfront property in another state under a shell company, and there were records of expensive jewelry and car purchases for her. John showed me documents proving all of this, including emails between Ronald and Ariadne planning their new life together. They were going to wait until Ronald's latest project launched, take the company public, cash out his shares, and disappear together. They had even discussed how to make me look incompetent so Ronald could claim I was mentally unstable and get the power of attorney revoked before they left. I forwarded all this evidence to Ronald's business partners and the relevant authorities. The company's board of directors has called for an emergency meeting, and several major investors have already pulled out. The company's stock value dropped by 40% in just 2 days after the news broke. Ariadne finally tried to contact me yesterday. She showed up at my parents' house where I've been staying, crying and claiming that she needed to explain everything. Through her tears, she spun a story about how Ronald had manipulated and pressured her into the affair. She said he threatened to ruin John's career if she didn't comply, and that she was going to tell me everything soon. I didn't believe a word she said, but I let her talk while secretly recording everything on my phone. Her story kept changing. First Ronald forced her, then they fell in love, then she was going to end it but he wouldn't let her. She finally broke down and admitted they had been planning to run away together all along. I sent the recording straight to John's divorce lawyer. Ronald's family tried to negotiate a deal through their lawyers. They offered to forget about the cars and drop any potential lawsuits if I signed a non-disclosure agreement about the embezzlement. They're desperate to keep this quiet because it could affect their other family businesses. I declined their offer. The truth deserves to come out. Claire showed up at my house again, this time much calmer. She actually tried to cry, talking about how this scandal would destroy their family name and begging me to think about Ronald's future. I reminded her of all the times she had called me a gold digger and treated me like dirt. I asked her how it felt knowing her son was the real thief in the family. She left without saying another word. The most surprising support has come from Ronald's younger sister Emma. She reached out to tell me that Ronald had stolen and sold one of their mother's expensive necklaces years ago but blamed it on the housekeeper, who was fired. She said she had always suspected Ronald wasn't the golden boy everyone thought he was. Some of our mutual friends are starting to choose sides. A few have blocked me on social media, saying I went too far by destroying Ronald's company. Others have completely cut off both Ronald and Ariadne, disgusted by their behavior. Most people seem shocked that Ariadne managed to hide a whole marriage for 5 years. I haven't decided if I'm going to press charges about the embezzlement. Part of me wants to let the board of directors handle it, but John says I should pursue it legally since some of that money came from our joint accounts. My lawyer says I have a strong case, but I'm tired of all the drama. Right now, I'm just focusing on moving forward with the divorce proceedings. I'll update again when there are more developments. The investigation into the company is still ongoing, and I have a feeling there's more yet to come out. Update 2: things have escalated far beyond what I ever expected. The investigation into Ronald's company has revealed a massive web of fraud that makes the affair look like a minor issue in comparison. It turns out Ronald wasn't just embezzling money for his future with Ariadne, he had been running an elaborate scheme with fake vendor contracts for years. 3 of his top executives were involved, and they had been siphoning money through a network of shell companies. The amount is now estimated to be closer to $8 million, not the $3.5 million we initially discovered. The scandal hit the local news last week. Ronald's face was on the front page of the business section, and several financial news websites have picked up the story. His family can't sweep this under the rug anymore. Their other businesses are being affected, people are pulling investments, and longtime business partners are distancing themselves. Ariadne has been spiraling since everything came out. She moved in with her sister after John kicked her out and changed the locks. According to mutual friends, she's been telling everyone who will listen that Ronald promised to leave me years ago but kept making excuses. She claims they were truly in love and that I'm just being vindictive because I couldn't handle the fact that Ronald had fallen for someone else. The most ridiculous part is that some of our friends have actually taken her side. My former college roommate Lisa called me to say I should have just filed for divorce like a normal person instead of destroying multiple lives. She said I let my anger cloud my judgment and that selling the cars and exposing the affair to Ronald's business partners was unnecessarily cruel. I reminded her how she felt when her ex cheated on her in college, but she said this was different because Ariadne was my best friend and now both of them had lost everything. Ronald's lawyers are still sending threatening letters about the cars, but my lawyer says they don't have a case. The power of attorney was ironclad and Ronald had explicitly given me authority over all his assets. They tried to argue that the cars were family heirlooms and should have been excluded, but there was nothing in writing to support this. The money from selling the cars is safely invested now. I'm using part of it to start my own marketing consultancy, something Ronald always discouraged because he said it would reflect badly on him if his wife worked for herself instead of staying home or working for his company. Several of his former clients have already reached out to potentially work with me. His mother Claire had a complete meltdown at a charity event last weekend. She started screaming at one of her friends who had just hired me to handle their company's rebranding. She called me a vindictive witch who was trying to steal her son's clients. Security had to escort her out. The video went viral in our social circle, and now even some of her closest friends are avoiding her. The investigation has also revealed that Ariadne wasn't the first. 2 former employees have come forward claiming Ronald had affairs with them and then paid them off when they threatened to tell me. He used company money for the payoffs, listing them as consulting fees in the books. His executives covered it up because they were all involved in the larger embezzlement scheme. Ronald's younger sister Emma has been feeding me more information about his past behavior. Apparently, this pattern started in college. He would charm people, use them, and then discard them when they were no longer useful. His family covered up several incidents involving female students who had complained about him to the university. The most satisfying development is that Ronald's partners are turning on each other. His CFO made a deal with the investigators and provided documents showing Ronald was the mastermind behind everything. In return, he got a written statement from the board that he had been manipulated into participating. Ronald's lawyer tried to claim the CFO was lying to save himself, but the evidence is pretty damaging. Ariadne attempted to contact me again through a fake social media account. She wrote a long message about how she never meant for any of this to happen and that Ronald had promised her a beautiful life together. She said they had planned to get married once his divorce from me was finalized, and she had already picked out her wedding dress. I didn't respond, but I did forward the message to John's lawyer. I've stopped following the news about Ronald's company and the investigation. My therapist suggested focusing on my new business and moving forward instead of getting caught up in their drama. The only updates I get now are from my lawyer, who says both criminal and civil charges are likely coming soon. Some people still think I went too far, but I don't regret anything. They chose to play stupid games, and now they're winning stupid prizes. Update 3: The divorce was finally settled last week, and I can honestly say it was worth every penny I spent on lawyers. Ronald's legal troubles meant he couldn't fight too hard about the cars or other assets. His lawyers advised him to settle quickly to show cooperation before his criminal trial. The prosecutor's office has filed multiple charges against Ronald for embezzlement, wire fraud, and falsifying business records. He's looking at significant prison time if convicted. Most of his former friends and business associates have completely abandoned him. Even his country club membership was revoked, which apparently bothered him more than the criminal charges. Ariadne's life has completely fallen apart. After John finalized their divorce, she tried to reconcile with him by sending him a 30-page letter explaining how Ronald had seduced her and promising she had changed. John responded by having his lawyer send her a cease and desist letter. He's now dating a lawyer he met during the divorce proceedings, and they recently bought a house together. Ariadne lost her job at the marketing firm when the scandal broke. Turns out sleeping with a client's husband and helping him embezzle money isn't great for business. She had to move back to her hometown in Idaho and is now working as a waitress at her cousin's diner. She posts daily inspirational quotes on social media about surviving betrayal and finding yourself, acting like she's the victim in all this. Last week she started a podcast about surviving narcissistic abuse. Apparently, Ronald is the narcissist who ruined her life, not the married man she chose to have an affair with. I used the car money to buy that beachfront property they had been planning to escape to. It's deliciously ironic that I'm now living in the house that was supposed to be their love nest. I've turned it into a beautiful home office for my new business, which has really taken off. 3 of Ronald's former clients signed with me last month alone. Ronald's family still tries to harass me occasionally. Claire sends nasty emails from new addresses every time I block her old ones. She's become obsessed with clearing the family name and even tried to write a book about how I supposedly manipulated and trapped her son. No publisher would touch it, especially with his criminal charges pending. The only family member I still talk to is Emma, Ronald's sister. She's cut ties with her family and is much happier for it. She told me Ronald had been the golden child who could do no wrong, and watching him fall from grace has been eye-opening for her. We meet for coffee sometimes and laugh about Claire's latest dramatic episodes. Some of our old friends have tried to reach out and apologize for taking Ariadne's side initially. I ignore most of them, but I did respond to Lisa, my former roommate. I told her she was welcome to support lying cheaters, but she shouldn't expect me to forgive and forget. She sent a tearful voice message about missing our friendship, which I deleted without listening to fully. I've started dating again recently. Nothing serious, but it's nice to know there are decent men out there. My date last week actually asked for my opinion on things and seemed interested in my business. It was surprisingly refreshing after years of Ronald dismissing my ideas and ambitions. People still occasionally tell me I went too far with my revenge, that I should have just walked away with my dignity. But I walked away with my dignity and $2 million in car money, plus a thriving business and a beach house. I'd say I won this round. For those wondering if I regret anything, absolutely not. The best revenge isn't just living well, it's living well in the house your cheating husband bought for his mistress while he prepares for his criminal trial. Karma really does come through sometimes.